and
Yeah, they've already started without us.
We haven't started. We're just chatting about Susan had a question about the recording of our data.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time keeping up with it.
So am I.
And
I end up batching it and doing it every week or so.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll end up doing. I have a question on the sleep total hours. Is the format to put like 8H and then 42 minutes, or are we supposed to multiply 8 times 60 and get the hours?
I did it the way you talked about it. 8, 8.42.
Okay. All right, good.
Let's just assume that the other ones are minutes and not try to multiply everything by 60. That's too complicated.
All right.
And what are go ahead, Susan, sorry.
On the brain games, I have this past week and a half, since I got back up online with them, I'm able to do it. And I think mine is set for 20 minutes a day. And this is my fault for not being very organized, but sometimes if I put down when I start, I might get interrupted and I leave for 5 or 10 minutes.
There's a way to, I'll show you how you can find that on Brain HQ at the very end.
I don't want to see it.
Everybody up here.
There's a place you can go and it'll tell you how many minutes you actually spend.
Oh, okay.
This is you here.
That would be helpful.
They should be
Yeah.
able to see.
I'll take a screenshot of it and send it to everybody.
You
Okay.
can do that by the day, or you can
These are different
wait
members
till
of
the
the
end
group.
of the week
You
and
go
do
through
the whole hours for the week, I believe,
Or excuse me, name you.
on that brain train.
Want to mute him?
She's got a.
Well, it looks like we record them when you do them, maybe probably most people are probably not doing it every day, but if we record 22 minutes on Monday and then 24 minutes on Wednesday, I can go down and add that up at the end. But I wasn't sure how best to actually track the amount of time, because sometimes it's not, I don't complete one session all at one time. I wait,
Right,
I
but
might.
it knows if you pause, it's not going to count the pause time.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So when you go, I'll send you a picture of the place you can go. It looks like a graph, and you poke at every square on the graph, and it tells you the date and the amount of time.
Oh, perfect.
For that
Okay.
day. So that's how I cheat, and because I track my steps on my phone, so I can go back and see what I did every day. My sleep is tracked on when I remember to wear it, which I haven't been doing recently. So I can go back and check that on my phone. And then I just have to remember about food and other stuff. But, it's easier, obviously, to do it daily.
Anyway.
I don't understand what's supposed to fall in the stress column.
Well, what I ended up doing the other day is
If you fight with somebody, you can put a plus.
Oh my God, would there be pluses in mine?
If you have
no,
just
it's supposed
a
to be
regular
stress
day
relief.
and you don't really, or if you say every day is stressful for me because I'm having to deal with Teel, then you put a plus on every single
No, but
line.
remember what we said is stress
Office.
relief is what we're counting.
Oh, stress relief?
Yeah.
But if you don't.
So what are we doing?
Just have one of your kitty cats coming up in your lap.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Well, I'm relieved. It sounds like we're
Well,
not.
let me jump in here for a minute. What
Yeah.
we're trying to do here is trying to figure out how to tally how we are participating in this program. And we're not expecting anybody to be perfect at this. We're not even concerned. It's all our first draft of trying to do this, but compared to me saying at the end of year one, gee, everybody's stopped losing ground and several people are making a little bit of progress, rather than just call that our research. I would like us to try to
Right.
try to be more methodical about this, partly so that we can know if it is making a difference, why, and is there. Bredesen has told us that the 3 key ingredients are sleep, exercise, and overnight fasting. So if we do those 3, that's great, but we're also, how are we going to judge exercise? And even though, steps seems like an easier thing to measure, but maybe other people are walking, in one of the preserves, or doing something at the Y on a regular basis, and we don't really have a separate column. We're trying to make this more methodical, but I'm really not trying to drive you all crazy with how we do this. And certainly as we work our way through it, we will, I think, get better at the big thing continues, as I've been thinking about this over the last month, is related to the food story. Food has been our bugaboo from day one, in this whole Bredesen program. And when do I get a plus? And how about, if I add 2 pieces of chocolate rather than 1, do I have to erase my plus and put in a minus? I'm really looking for everybody to, me, I've mostly argued for everything in moderation, including moderation. But so it is about, can we focus on if the majority of our food that day was healthy eating that I did consciously, then that's a plus. And if I really paid no attention to it that day at all,
And ate a lot of junk food.
or I had some reason that I could not do it, that's a minus.
Yeah.
Without any real judgment that you're going to get your wrist slapped or be thrown out of the program or something like that.
When does a minus become a V for vacation?
I think when it, I think
Well, here's an
honestly,
example.
it should just be a minus if you take a vacation day, or you've got company, or there's some other reason that you're taking a break from it because you're sick and tired of that, they're all a minus.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so we can do that instead of vacation, because I'm going to be going to Uganda for 10 days and all they eat there are carbohydrates. It's very difficult to get anything else. So I know I'm going to be off the program then.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well,
Let's see who's
how is
here.
everybody?
And we've got everybody online muted. So why don't we start with the people who are on the on Zoom, and have you unmute yourselves and
sign in, please.
yes, right.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Maureen and Bruce. If you guys could unmute yourself
And while you're saying hi and who you are, if you would tell us how you are. How are things going?
We're bumping along. Maureen and Bruce Kinsey from Southport. We've been in the program since the beginning, and I think it's certainly, at the very beginning, we lost weight, and Bruce lost so much, Dr. Teel gave him permission to eat ice cream.
What a guy. Yeah.
Really. But yeah, we haven't started the spreadsheet, but we will. I was kind of waiting for all the riffraff to go through and have a final decision on it, and I guess we're there, so we will start doing that.
Yeah, I think the only thing maybe we haven't nailed is the stress relief thing that Nancy brought up. Do we want to do a plus or minus in terms of how stressful we felt that day, as opposed to how much time we're spending trying to you know, be
Moderate stress.
moderate stress, right?
Right.
What do you guys think is the easiest way to do it? I mean,
I
probably,
think,
yeah,
can I just interject? I'm sorry, but to
Yes.
answer that, I'm thinking if you keep everything on the positive side, because you don't want to get confused. If all the pluses mean something that you're doing good. So I think if you engage in some sort of stress relief activity that works for you on that day, then put a plus. If, because exercise could be your stress relief, really. But whatever that is, if you felt you need to some stress relief activity and then you do it, give yourself a plus. That's what I would do. But keep everything on.
I think that makes sense. And, anybody have any problem with understanding it that way? I mean, what we're looking for is for that stress relief. If I do a few minutes of mindfulness, if I meditate, if I as BJ said, if I let the cat sleep undisturbed on my lap for a few minutes, providing that that's restful and not stressful.
right.
Yeah.
You take a walk in the woods,
yeah.
whatever it is that, brings you into the present moment and makes your shoulders.
I think in terms of the
relax.
big time stressors that I've been dealing with, an illness or a hospitalization of a family member or something like that, those things would probably come out in a quarterly interview or something about saying, how have things gone over the last few months? So I think the negatives, Liz, would probably come out, in a narrative form at beginning, middle, or end of this particular group of sessions.
Okay.
And one thing I discovered in terms of monitoring stress relief kinds of activities, I discovered on my Google Calendar I can color code things. So now if I blocked out time to go for a walk or to go have dinner with Nancy Adams or whatever, I can color code that. So I started using dark blue for stress relief and just deciding what were the things that were going to make me feel good and give myself credit for those.
So we're up next, Patty. You and I are right here. So
Right.
Chip Teel and Patty Sable at the front of the room here.
Right.
And grateful to have all of you here. Liz, you're up next.
You're muted.
I hit it. Okay,
There
there
you
you
go.
go. I haven't done any of the data collection yet either, but I've been certainly looking at it and trying to do my best to do everything. But part of my issue is that I don't have any of the fancy monitoring devices that most of you already have. But I have been keeping track of my sleep hours for a long time, quite a while, a few years actually. I'm by nature kind of a data collector, so I'm happy to do this form as well. Other than that, I think I'm doing okay. I could still do Wordle. That's my brain game every day. Although sometimes I screw up, but anyways, that's about all I have to say to that. I'm just happy to be receiving all this information, and I'm definitely benefiting from it.
And we're grateful that you're doing, Liz is doing all of the transcribing. So we're very appreciative for all the hard work she's done on that over the last few years.
Thank you.
So Pam's
My
next.
pleasure.
You want to unmute Pam?
I'm unmuted, aren't I?
Okay, you are, yes.
I thought I did. Well, I'm down in the Keys and I have no way to print off anything at this time. And I don't know that I can get into Excel. I'm not real tech savvy. But I know my sleep stuff. I'm much more exercised down here. Food is fairly good. I mean, I've always eaten fairly well. So I will get back to I will start recording when I can get the information to work with. I mean, I can see it on my computer, but I can't print it, and I don't know how to use Excel. I'm sorry.
Are you using a PC or a Mac or an iPad or Mac?
Oh,
Okay,
I'm
so,
iPad, no, iPad.
okay, do you have Numbers on your iPad? The Apple program called Numbers? Because that would be, if you do, and you can easily download it, it's free. You should be able to just click on each day, you know, each cell and enter the value.
You mean I
Yes,
can enter it on my computer and it'll go onto the,
Exactly, yeah, so
No.
use
I
the
will look for that.
use the numbers spreadsheet, look for numbers on your iPad and then use the numbers spreadsheet version that
What-
I sent out, but I can send it to you again.
Patty, if I just go to the App Store, can I get
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Put it on?
you can.
I don't
Yeah.
think the icon is on there already, but I can go to the App Store and go to Numbers and
Yes.
download.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then let me know if you need me to send it to you. Happy to
Okay.
do that.
Okay, thank you, Patty.
Yeah,
I'm very-
Sally, you want to unmute? Welcome.
Hi, I'm new here. My name's Sally Thomas. I'm in Freeport and I'm soaking it all in and doing well. So nice to meet you all.
Hi,
Welcome.
Sandy.
Nice to
Welcome.
meet you.
Yeah, welcome.
Do you have a copy of the spreadsheet we've been talking about, Sally?
Yes, I do. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
right.
Yep.
Good. Good job. All right. And Tina, you're next.
All righty. Hi, my name's Tina. I am new. I know I spoke with Patty Sable and I did attend one of the support group meetings. I have not started using a spreadsheet yet. It's a lot to soak in. I know I do track my food, my sleep, and my stress is all tracked using the device that I use. And it tracks stress as heart rate variability. And I use a Garmin device. So I use a Garmin Lily, which I wear all the time. It's my watch. So at some point I might get there.
So Tina, how does it rate your stress based on your heart rate? Does it give you an interpretation of it as good, bad, or indifferent?
Yes, it tells you what my stress levels are. I had a recent break, so my stress levels are a bit up. So like my average stress levels now are 55, and it does give you a relaxation prompt at times with deep breathing to help you through that if you wish to use that on the alert. I've been using the Garmin for a couple years now. So it tells you if you're rested, stress between 0 to 25. So they have their own numeric way of using that.
Interesting.
Which way does the score go? Is a lower number better or worse?
Yes, lower is better. So 0 to 25 would be rested, and then I can go. But I like that where it does the sleep too, because it does sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep, and awake. And I will probably mute and go off camera because I can do some walking while I listen to you, and that may be helpful for me during this meeting. Just wanted to let you know.
That sounds good. Moving is good.
That's just a plain Garmin?
It's a Garmin Lily, Lily. And my own vanity, I think I told Dr. Teel, I've not seen you down in there. I got it. I wanted a watch that was kind of cute. So I think it's kind of pretty. So I don't know if you can, and it's
Oh, wow.
and it does have all that. I just plug it in when I shower, and it lasts for a couple of days, and I wear it and I have no issue.
They'll all have watch envy at this point.
All right, Sue and Bill, you're up next. And you need to unmute. There you go.
There you go. There you go. Well, our furnace went out for a couple of days, so we had a little bit of
Ouch.
stress earlier in the week, but we survived that. Luckily, we didn't have the weather that you all had up there, or it would have been pretty intolerable. But
Tell everybody where you guys are.
we're in Dublin, Ohio. And when the furnace went out, it was 29 degrees. I mean, we're not talking anything below zero. So we survived that. And but that derailed us a couple days. And I have to say, we have not been getting out much for walking because we've had some bad weather the week before and slippery sidewalks and that sort of thing. But today is lovely with sun. So I'm going to try to go out after the meeting. And Bill's had trouble with his knees for a while, and we saw an advertisement for arthritis knee pain where they inject cushioning stuff in the space between the bones of your and your kneecap area. And he's actually getting some relief from that. So we're optimistic that maybe he will be able to resume walking without discomfort.
I can still limp pretty well.
Great.
Great.
Thanks
Nice
for
to
the
see you.
report. Yeah.
Rick Lynchus, you're up next. How are you, Rick?
I'm good, thanks.
So
Can
tell
you see
everybody
me?
where you're Tell everybody where you're located.
I'm located in Levittown, Pennsylvania. I just moved there from Vermont. That
Wow.
picture that I see is of a ceiling. Is that right?
Oh, yes, somebody's got their, let's see,
There-
who is it? Pam walked away and left,
Oh,
Yeah.
so do you see
left
me?
her thing.
Yes.
So
We
yeah,
see you. We see
we
you.
see you and we hear you just fine.
Yep.
And then
Okay.
once we get talking, we will probably mute everybody so that people can feel free to move around or sneeze or cough and clear their throat and not feel like they're bothering anybody.
Well,
Right.
I don't know anything about what's been going on. I don't know anything about the Excel program or the numbers program or what you're supposed to do with eating and exercise and sleep. All I know is I eat when I'm hungry, I exercise when I can, and I sleep all the time.
I guess you get 2 pluses in the sleep column then.
You should
No,
be the president.
I'll try. We have some newcomers here and a lot of people have been at this for 3+ years. So
Wow.
I will try to explain some things as we go along, partly because it's a good refresher for me and everybody else, and partly because we have one group of beginners and experts here all in one room. So we will do that collectively. But nice to have you, Rick. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. The only
And,
thing that I want to mention is, as far as exercise, I was a fanatic with exercise. I was teaching Tai Chi and martial arts.
Cool.
Since and my job as an architect has been on a job site in construction, overseeing large schools. What happened because of that is I started falling down a lot. And this is over the last few years. And they told me, I went to a neurologist and they said I had vertigo. And they showed me the different exercises with your head and had a whole bunch of exercises. And they gave me meclizine for my vertigo. It hasn't helped. I've been getting hurt quite a bit I can't do any exercise. I can't even rake the leaves without falling in the grass and then rolling down the hill into my neighbor's concrete slab.
Well, what we're doing here is trying to focus on improving cognitive function for everybody, regardless of the cause of it. And we'll tell you about the whole program as we go forward. And we'll send. Do you look at email on a regular basis, or do we have to send it through the post office.
Well, I look at email. If I recognize a name, I'll open it up. If I don't recognize it, it's usually spam or somebody trying to sell me something. So I delete it before I even open it. I never
Okay.
know if it's going to be a spam or a hack.
Well, this particular group passes a lot of stuff around between the members about what they've observed or what they're enjoying or having trouble with. And so anything that comes from
Groups.io.
Groups.io is this particular group of people. And it comes out of the Boothbay Region Health Center in Boothbay, Maine, Boothbay Harbor, Maine. But we can work some of these things out. If you're not getting the information that you need, you can mention that to your caregiving team of Jim Turner and his group, okay?
Right.
Fred, you're up next. Hi, Fred.
Can you unmute, Fred?
Maybe. Yeah.
I think we hear you.
Nope.
Not yet.
Not yet. You're not unmuted.
Yeah.
Hit the space bar.
For me, it's down in the bottom. Or actually up at the other place is up in the top above my name.
On the microphone.
Yeah.
There's a little microphone symbol.
Yeah.
Bottom left or top right.
So we'll
Shall we
move
go
to,
on
move
to
to Jeannie.
Jeannie?
We'll come back whenever you, yeah.
Figure it out.
So Jeannie Hamrin, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you all?
We're doing well. We're doing well. Are you
You
still
weathered the weather up there well, I guess.
are you hiding someplace warm?
I'm in Tobago.
Okay.
And the temperature is between maybe 77 and 82. Beautiful beaches. We just had lunch and had an iguana drop in on us and that's a banana.
Well, that hasn't happened to me in a long time.
Yeah. But anyway, I am sort of on vacation and I'm not really following the program right now. I tried to do Health HQ and the internet here is not always so stable. And so it was coming in and out and my habits are not, they're good here. I exercise and I eat well. But it's different, like we're in a different time zone. So last night, I didn't go to bed till after midnight and there's a lot of different things. So I'm just on vacation and I thought I'd plug in for a little while, but I'm in a group setting here with the housemates and I'll probably not stay on for the whole time or I'll take it up to my bedroom.
We'll live vicariously through your vacation.
Well, it's a beautiful island and I'm with really nice people.
Well, great.
Widowed friend my age and her son and people 20 years younger than us. And we don't quite keep up with them when we're walking, but we do well.
That's great. Good. Thanks. All right.
Hey,
And
Millie.
we've got Millie and Jim next.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yeah, okay.
You're way down south in Southport, right?
Yeah, we're way down south in Southport, Maine.
Way down.
Yeah, it's sunny and balmy over here. It's about 72
There's no chair.
in the house.
Yeah.
So,
I'll stay for a while. Well, just tell me.
yeah, but how are we doing, Millie?
We're doing fine.
Oh, Millie says we're doing fine. We,
Do you believe me?
I believe you all the time. We've been not following the diet real closely. We're more on a Mediterranean diet, I would say. We did spend a good year working on the diet. I think Millie lost 10 pounds and I put on 10 pounds. So we're trying to reverse that. But we joined the Y, and we're walking every day, or 5 days a week, 5 to 6 days a week. We go over and walk.
Yeah.
And for stress relief, we listen to music and dance around the house whenever we feel like that.
Great.
So, and we've been traveling around a bit. I've just been given the plumbing inspector here retired, because I'm the building inspector, and the plumbing inspector retired. So they just, instead of hiring a new one, they just gave it to me. So I'm busy at work doing a lot of paperwork. So we haven't been filling out the papers, Patty, and I've looked at them a couple of times, and then that's as far as I've gotten.
Got it. I understand. Okay, Tina, we already.
Tina did. Rosalie?
There's Rosalie, yes.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I'm Rosalie from Bristol, Maine, and I'm new here or I was with Dr. Teel last year in that group, and I'm still, I've been a little overwhelmed with everything, so I'm still trying to figure it out. And Patty has helped me in sending me stuff, and I appreciate it. And I was a little late because I was out walking. It's a beautiful day here. It's a little cold, but even when I went out walking, there was no wind. So I had to take off my hat and so that's good.
Rosalie has this, she has a southern accent from Bristol, Maine.
Yeah. Southern Maine, like Southport, I think. Anyway, I think my biggest challenge is the food. And that's been my challenge my whole life. So I'm still working on that. But I play Wordle and Worldle every day. And that's, I like that. Anyway, I'm moving into I'm just taking what I can. I have a lot of things going on in my life. So I'm trying to fit it all in and figure it all out. But so I haven't started the data reporting, but it's just nice to listen to everybody talk about it. It makes me feel, just us talking about it, makes me feel, oh, I can do this. I don't have to be perfect.
Right.
And anyway, so I appreciate that people are talking about it, because it gives me courage. So thank you.
Right.
And I'm happy to be here.
Good. All right.
So Thea, you and
Yes,
you and Benny, how are you guys?
we're doing good.
Yep.
You
I
in
got
a
it.
place warm, or are you in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I'm in the neighborhood.
We're in the living room. It's warm.
Warm in here. It's nice outside though. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
We
All right.
we did our exercise at the Y today, so
Oh,
we
good.
haven't walked yet.
Good. Well, we're all turning over new leaves as we get into February. All of those New Year's resolutions that we made over a month ago, we've got no excuse to not get started on them pretty soon. Yeah.
How about Janet?
Janet, hi.
Hi, I'm doing pretty well. Trying to do that's been my goal, is to do Brain HQ more every day. So I've done that. I'm doing the jigsaw puzzle online, word search, and solitaire. So I'm doing all those. And I wasn't very consistent with exercising, so I'm trying to exercise a bit more. So I've kind of followed Dr. Living Good for a long time now. So he has a 10-minute workout. So I'm easing into it by doing about 15 minutes. And not doing it every day, but I've done it more than I've done. that list that you have for us, it makes me more accountable. I like the list. And so it makes me see that, oh, I need to either put my steps down or, how much I've exercised. And so that's been good. And, working on the exercise a little bit more than I ever have, and trying to work on the food. One of the things I've always done, which I don't think is the worst thing personally, but we sometimes have rice, we sometimes have potatoes. So I'm trying to be careful about not having those every meal, but I'm trying to be more aware of a little bit more vegetables. There's a certain amount of vegetables I just can't eat. And so but I'm trying to at least do the ones that I can, salads. But I've been reading more about vegetables and the GMO. So it's like, oh my gosh, you try to do the organic and this and then, okay, just when you think you're doing good, oh, this is, GMOs are an issue. So, one thing at a time,
Sure.
but I really like the list. I'm glad you put that list together. For me personally, it's good.
Well, we
To
also
keep
want to
accountable.
thank you that through word of mouth, you have a friend of yours here,
Right,
Kathy.
Yeah.
right.
So Kathy is here in person, and
We can
um,
turn this
so
around
we-
now so that people can see who else is here. So do we want to start? with this?
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Did we
There's
finish
somebody
with
next to
everybody?
Janet. Fred.
We have Fred twice.
yeah,
Oh, that's Fred.
Fred.
Yeah.
Fred is cloned
Nancy-
himself. Yeah. So that means he has to write 2 books a year rather than just one. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. When Jana was talking about the GMO, that's not my question. My question is about glycemic load, glycemic index.
Okay.
They're different, but I'm not sure which is more important. Are you able to enlighten me or us?
Maybe. The glycemic index has to do with whether a food raises your blood sugar very rapidly when you take it, when you eat it. So there are some foods like peas and corn that have a high glycemic index, meaning that it can get into your bloodstream and raise your blood sugar more than some other foods. But I think what I'm going to try to convey in a few minutes is more of my usual trying to say, don't sweat the small stuff, and really let's try to address things that are sustainable for the long run. Here we've just had Bremen check in. Sandra Johns has just joined us. Hi, Sandra.
Hi.
Hi, well, good to
Just
see
got
you.
home.
Yeah, so around this table here, even though we won't turn the camera around again, we'll go around this table so that at least you guys will know who is here with Patty and I. Nancy, you want to start?
So I'm Nancy Adams, and I've been with the program a long time. This means I've done it very religiously. I find the spreadsheet helpful because it makes you honest. Oh dear, oh darn. I think it's a good motivator. And one of my interests is I really was interested in the list of cookbooks that Dr. Teel put out. And at some point, I really like, if anyone's used any of these, to get some recommendations, because food is a real challenge.
I'm going to start out with that today as well. So Kathy?
I'm Kathy and I'm brand new. I'm primarily here for my husband, who not only has type 2 diabetes, but he also has either dementia or Alzheimer's. And I'd just like to get some information on what I.
You guys live, whereabouts you live?
Way over in Boothby Harbor.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty close by today, since we've got the rest of North America represented here and a few islands, So BJ,
I'm BJ Dobson, and I've been with this group since day one, struggling along with everything.
yeah,
And everything's going okay, but on that spreadsheet down where you put in your blood pressure, was everybody able to do that? Every time I would put it in, it would go to completely different numbers.
Oh, I may have the wrong validation logic in there. I'll just wipe out what's there and
Did anybody else have a problem? We got to that point, that's off the sheet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
yeah.
BJ always does everything. Thank you for letting me know. I'll try to
Yeah.
fix that.
And Donna,
I'm Donna Denniston, and I've been with the program pretty much since the beginning, and I'm coming off a period where I would not have wanted to see my spreadsheet for a couple of months. So I'm working my way back into.
can you guys on Zoom hear Donna?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
No, I can't hear. Yeah, I'm working toward better compliance, and I've done much better. I've had an incredibly difficult couple of weeks and months, just with health wise and all kinds of things at my house. So I haven't really done the spreadsheet yet. I also need to get a sleep monitor. I have an app, but I don't trust it. I don't think it works.
I think
All right.
Nancy DeWall is not here, but she's got something that she's putting under her mattress.
Right, the
She's-
Withings
Right.
thing, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you all for being here. How many of you have read one of Bredesen's books, either The End of Alzheimer's or The First Survivors of Alzheimer's, or one of his Alzheimer's program books? So maybe I should ask, is there anybody that hasn't read or hasn't seen or doesn't know about, hasn't gotten to any of those things yet? Is there, Kathy, you may not know of these.
Janet's been kind to lend me her End of Alzheimer's one, and I've read chapter 8.
Okay.
I thought that was the one that was gonna
Help you?
help me. Yeah, I mean,
Great. So Rick, a book for you to look at, Rick Lynch's, would be called The First Survivors of Alzheimer's. It was written about a year ago, 4 or 5 years after the first book that the doctor wrote about this particular program, and it's what inspired us to get going here about 4 years ago. And this group that you're a part of is the outgrowth of that particular effort, where I was so impressed by the health center board member that gave me a copy of this book. And I read through it and said that I really, sounds like it's too good to be true. I'd like to try to see if we can replicate it, because I've been writing a lot of prescriptions over the decades for various medications for cognitive impairment that weren't very beneficial. As people have alluded to here, the most difficult thing for everybody, as we've been reverse engineering this program for a number of years, is the food piece. But I think when we first started, I was a novice enough that I think I recommended a book called The Anti-Inflammatory Diet for Beginners or something like that. And now we actually have a whole lot of high quality cookbooks authored by a number of doctors and their spouses about the best diets and the best cookbooks specifically for Alzheimer's disease. The one that I like the most, because it has the best pictures, is this one called The Brain Warriors Cookbook. And this one, to give you an idea about it, all of the glossy photos are just wonderful, and the recipes. This is not their first rodeo. They've written a few other cookbooks as well, and so in this particular book, who the authors are a psychiatrist and his nurse wife, who are have written this particular book, and the psychiatrist 30 years ago decided that he shouldn't be in a medical specialty that didn't have some objective way to measure how you were doing, that you shouldn't just have to lay on his couch, and have him figure out whether you were doing better or not. And he became a strong proponent of a particular kind of CAT scan called a SPECT scan. And now he and his centers that he started across the country over the last 30 years have about 30,000 SPECT scans that they have done on people with various kinds of brain injury, brain damage, brain problems. And so even though he is not a Bredesen member, his program is, and his approach to this is quite comparable to what Dr. Bredesen and his folks do. Their claim to fame, in my mind, is that they have put together a cookbook that starts out with the first chapter or two analyzing what you have in your pantry already and which things you can feel comfortable giving to your neighbors and friends, and which ones you should just throw out and not even bother to torment or impact badly the health of your neighbors by trying to frugally get rid of a bad thing.
So Amen is last name?
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen to that. So Daniel Amen.
Is that the name?
Yes,
yeah.
Daniel Amen.
Daniel
Who's the
Amen.
author?
Daniel Amen, A-M-E-N. And it's also nicely organized in that it starts with smoothies and health shakes for breakfast, and then it moves through fancier breakfasts and moves into salads and lunches, and then moves into suppers and desserts and everything else. So you can kind of work your way through the course of your day.
And it's obvious that you've been using it because you've got all these
I've got all these stickies
bookmarks
in
in
them.
here, yeah.
And so I've been trying to see if I could do some of these things. There is, in these particular recipes, there are a few tricks of the trade. They follow both basically no sugar. There is really very little carb in there. There is zero processed food but they are very gourmet recipes. And once you get the handle of the way that they organize things, for instance, I think I might have mentioned that I got interested in fruit smoothies a couple of years ago, and that you can use your everyday blender and put anything, any kind of fruit in it with any other kind of supplement. And it's actually a pretty easy way to disguise a lot of other medicine that you may or may not want to disguise. But certainly, I had never thought of a smoothie having other vegetables in it. I thought of a fruit drink kind of like a a milkshake or a frozen drink, but it's really quite fascinating that you can throw a cup or so of kale in there or almost anything else. And even though we've got one person on this call who is quite turned off by the color of some of these smoothies, so you have to take into account in terms of whether you've just put your peaches in with something and all of a sudden it looks more green than peach colored, and that isn't everybody else's cup of tea, no pun intended. But in any case, I think what all of the cookbooks that I've chosen for us this year have in common is they all have wonderful recipes. They're all quite delicious. They're all quite easy to follow. Basically, the next one I'm going to tell you about is this particular book called The Brain Health Kitchen. The pictures are almost as good. The recipes are better. I think they're a little less strict about fish and a tiny bit of meat in there. They're not quite as obsessive about dairy and things, but the author is a retired OBGYN by the name of Annie Fenn, F-E-N-N. And Annie was an OBGYN in Utah, I believe, for her 30-year career. And she always liked food and liked to cook, but she decided to get out of OBGYN, and she now runs a cooking school. And so not only does she write this cookbook, but she goes around the country not only teaching healthy eating, but she also has fully embraced everything to do with the Bredesen-like program. And she has her byline under the Brain Health Kitchen is preventing Alzheimer's through food. And she talks a lot in here about ApoE4. She talks an awful lot about the role of exercise and sleep and overnight fasting and all of those things. The thing that that I think she's also a fairly honest scientist about is that she says the studies are widespread that a mostly plant-based diet is the thing to follow. The studies that say that it must be entirely plant-based versus mostly plant-based are ongoing at the moment. And she says until that data is actually in, she's not going to commit herself to say that you absolutely must have a 100% plant-based diet.
Whoops. We're good.
So Fred, you've got two.
We fixed it.
Okay, good. So anyway, so that's Annie Fenn, and I'm starting to reach out to her to find out about graduates of her cooking school that are in our particular area to try to see whether we could
get some classes
going or something here.
What was her name?
Her name is Dr. Annie Fenn, F-E-N-N.
Okay.
F as in Frank.
It's on Amazon for $30. Hardcover.
Please read her whole introduction. She toured much of her OBGYN career. She also, surprisingly or not surprisingly, focused a lot on menopause and postmenopause issues. and actually started making a connection between some of the cognitive challenges that people had in the perimenopausal period, and then started, and as her mom developed Alzheimer's disease, that kind of cemented her interest in this particular field. So I think her personal story would resonate with a lot of you as well. The third book that is on the list that we sent out last time is called The 30-Day Alzheimer's Solution. And this one, again, subtitle, The Definitive Food and Lifestyle Guide to Preventing Cognitive Decline. So the pictures are pretty good. The diversity is broader. It's more of a utilitarian kind of casserole kind of thing, and not quite as gourmet dishes as some of the things you might find in one of the other, in the Brain Warriors cookbook. But I think they all, this particular one is authored by a husband and wife doctor couple called Sherzai, Sherzai, Dean and Aisha. And so they first wrote a book about the Alzheimer's solution, and then wrote subsequently a 30-day cookbook on how to implement the Alzheimer's solution. So they must, I don't know much about them except what's in the intro here, but they must have found that diet wasn't easy for some people on their Alzheimer's solution as well.
I did lecture on TV.
Oh, you had, how's he sound? Okay, good.
I think he was kind of bald. I watched so many of those things, it keep coming into my computer all the time to sign up for these summit things, starting such and such day, and they're gonna go for 9 days, and you have 24 hours to watch each one, and there's so many of them that using up all my time.
BJ Dobson is struggling with time management because she's watching too many videos about food.
Timers.
So anyway, she had said that she saw Dr. Sherzai on TV and was good to listen to as well.
One of those others, I think the first one too, he's often got a lecture on.
Amen. Yeah.
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 Yeah. You know, I think no question about it, the complexity of this program is time consuming for everybody to do it well. You know, and I think that is becoming increasingly clear as we try to fill out a score sheet and try to keep ourselves doing all of the pieces of the lifestyle change. You know, somebody asked me the other day, how much time does this program take? And I think just going through the individual pieces, it's probably an hour and a half a day, or, you know, maybe even 2 hours a day. And not everybody has that amount of time to contribute every day, even though the end result of what you're going to do for your brain health is something important. And I think certainly if you know, if I'm used to throwing something in the microwave and heating up yesterday's leftovers versus spending 45 minutes to an hour to prepare a meal, you got to do it differently.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is, you know, important to, you know, I'm not trying to monopolize everybody's life. And certainly, I think the thing that I have been very aware of since we started this group is there is a big difference between those of us that are dealing with some mild cognitive decline and those that are dealing with some severe cognitive decline. And I think the real challenge also, though, is if you're dealing with severe cognitive decline, either in you or your spouse, then not only is the urgency there, but the challenges of how you are going to accomplish that are gargantuan. So it is understood that this is hard work for anybody in general, but even harder work for some. So with that, I wanted to also kind of refresh the big picture of the Bredesen approach, and also last month's meeting where we talked a little bit about a couple of markers of inflammation called highly sensitive CRP and homocysteine levels, and a marker of diabetes called the hemoglobin A1C, and put them in some context. Bredesen's biggest contribution to my way of thinking is that he was somebody that popularized the idea that Alzheimer's was not the conventional wisdom caused by one yet to be found cause, but to actually say that Alzheimer's is the final common pathway of 36 or 40 different factors, and that everybody dealing with cognitive impairment likely has 10 or 15 of those 35 or 40 different factors. He popularized the saying that there are 36 holes in the roof, and unless you are going to plug most of those holes, you're going to get wet anyway. And the other thing is that he tried to make it a bit simpler by boiling it down to 6 particular subtypes of dementia, and 6 particular collections of these 35 or 40 factors. And a number of them are bundled together into something that he called an inflammatory subtype. And the inflammatory subtype we've spent a lot of time talking about over the last few years, that if your markers of inflammation are elevated, and those markers of inflammation that are most easily obtained are these highly sensitive CRP levels and these homocysteine levels. If you have these markers being elevated, then the question is, where is the inflammation? And most of what I think was startling to me and probably many others of you is the inflammation is considered low-grade inflammation. It may also be even unrecognizable inflammation. So it is not necessarily a rip-roaring poison ivy rash all over my arms and legs. It might be a low-grade leaky gut syndrome that I don't even know whether I have it. But if I were to be able to look at the lining of my intestine, I would find that there is increased permeability between the cells of my intestine, so that things that I ingest get across from my intestine into my bloodstream. And once they are in my bloodstream, then they can stir up my immune system and cause a lot of inflammation in all sorts of parts of my body. Maybe my gastrointestinal tract, but maybe as far away as inflaming the lining of my brain, where the blood-brain barrier also gets leaky and things that are stirring up Alzheimer's disease can be the end result of 20 or 30 years of low-grade inflammation of my intestinal lining. And that whole cascade of events, that whole series of domino effect kinds of things are not conventional wisdom as the cause of Alzheimer's disease. But it makes sense that people from the time of the Greeks and Romans have been talking about you are what you eat, or that there is a connection between the body and the brain. And I think as we have now had more and more revisionist medicine out there, it is quite clear that the cardiology world believes that an awful lot of heart disease and stroke are caused by low-grade inflammation. And actually, the cardiology world is probably one of the biggest users of this blood test called the highly sensitive CRP, and they are using it if you have risk factors for heart trouble, where you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, smoking history, family history of parents with heart disease, any of these kinds of things, and you haven't had any cardiac event, and they are trying to decide how big is your risk. Many cardiologists are now ordering a highly sensitive CRP in addition to trying to control your blood pressure and cholesterol. And if your highly sensitive CRP is elevated, they are saying, we better do a stress test on you, even if you don't have any symptoms. We better look much harder at you, even if you don't have any symptoms. So this is kind of cutting edge kind of stuff that the groups of doctors that work on heart disease or stroke prevention are saying the highly sensitive CRP is a good marker. When we were talking about it last month, it was primarily as whether or not it was an indication of what's going on with my brain, whether there is a low-grade inflammatory process, and is this a way to get into that and know whether I am at risk or not. Unfortunately, the more research I've been able to do, it's not that simple. That when your brain has a leaky blood-brain barrier and there is active inflammation going on, your highly sensitive CRP is going to be elevated. But once damage occurs, and once those brain cells are atrophied, the inflammation sometimes goes away because the cells are scarred. And the highly sensitive CRP can now be lower. And I actually found a study that said that the people with the worst Alzheimer's disease had the lowest highly sensitive CRPs of anybody that they were looking at with Alzheimer's disease, because the horse is out of the barn.
They've already fried all those
They've already
cells.
fried all of their cells.
Yeah.
So the issue is that when your CRP levels are being measured, you need to also put it in some context of where is my brain at the moment? Am I early on with some cognitive impairment, or is my cognitive impairment quite advanced? And I've got to think about interpreting this same number quite a bit differently, depending upon what the big picture is of the person sitting across from me. So if you expected this to be easy, guess what? It's not. The other thing is kind of like that too. The homocysteine level is a marker of inflammation. Interestingly, there's an amino acid called methionine, and it gives a little chemical bond to another amino acid to convert cysteine into homocysteine. And that is something that happens when there are inflammatory things going on with our immune system. So when our immune system gets stirred up, this chemical reaction, partly from the first responders that are getting to the site, cause homocysteine to be formed. And that homocysteine level is also going to be elevated in people whose immune system is stirred up. But there's also a big but here, that there are certain vitamin deficiencies, like vitamin B12 deficiencies or folic acid deficiencies, that can also elevate your homocysteine level. There can be nutritional deficiencies that elevate your homocysteine level. So even though we are using it in our program in a Bredesen-inspired way to measure inflammation, as an indication of how hard we should be working to improve our brain cells, that there are sometimes that these numbers by themselves do not add up, and they do not give us the answer that we want. So one of the subtypes, though, is inflammation, and I really think it is quite common, and far more common than most regular doctors would appreciate, that there is a connection between your gut and your brain, and that there is an inflammatory process that is stirred up by what we eat or don't eat, healthy or unhealthy, that causes us to have a leakier gut, so that things that should be kept out of our bloodstream and things that should be kept away from stirring up our immune system get into our bloodstream, stir up our immune system, and eventually stir up and cause inflammation in the brain.
You know, something that I also saw was that with the leaky gut thing, that people do not chew their food. And you're in a big hurry and you swallow a whole lot of it. And when it gets down there in your gut, it runs into the lining of, what is it, the little intestine, and it can tear it. And then they can't take care of all that stuff.
All the housekeeping it's supposed to be doing.
Really chew everything up. And you become conscious of it after a while. I gotta chew that down instead of just swallowing.
So just what BJ's mother taught her.
Right.
On the computer.
Yeah. Is that we got to chew our food.
Things they're saying that people with low carb, and they wouldn't have all of those autoimmune diseases that everybody can get.
Sure.
Interesting.
And I think it is becoming a big part of this inflammatory reaction story, that our immune system is stirred up by a lot of things. And then when your immune system gets stirred up by something in the food that you're eating, then when the immune system fire starts, you know, it causes an awful lot of other inflammatory molecules to get stirred up too. The one that I think I mentioned before is that how often people develop a case of the shingles when they're dealing with some other stress in their life, whether it be a stress of an infection, the stress of a pneumonia, the stress of a surgery, the stress of life of some kind. And so the immune system has sort of a domino effect. When it gets stirred up by something unrelated, it can kind of spread that damage to a lot of other places in our immune. And again, whether it is a particle in the food that actually stimulates an immune response that gets to our brain, or whether the immune system gets triggered by something else and is kind of collateral damage in a way from some other inflammatory process. The end result is, if that low-grade inflammation is ongoing for a long period of time, and Bredesen and his colleagues feel that this isn't something that just began last week or last month, that there are decades of preceding inflammatory change for which the end result is Alzheimer's disease.
Is leaky gut and like microscopic colitis or colitis itself
Go together?
Go together or similar, or?
Yes, I mean, I would be out of place to say it this way, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that microscopic colitis is a relatively recent, frequently diagnosed condition. We used to only talk about mega inflammatory bowel disease, like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, big time things that cause people to really be very, very sick. And in the last 20 years, when it has become very, very frequent that people will actually get colonoscopies, and a lot of people get colonoscopies because they have symptoms, that it is now routine for the gastroenterologists that even if they don't see an ulcer, they will biopsy the normal looking intestine anyway. And when they do that, they are finding quite often that there is this microscopic under the surface inflammation that has been labeled microscopic colitis. So I think it is very likely that there are a whole bunch of people that have leaky gut. Some of them have gastrointestinal symptoms. Some of them don't have gastrointestinal symptoms. And some of them, whether they have gastrointestinal symptoms or not, but probably more likely if they do have gastrointestinal symptoms, if they get a colonoscopy and there are some random biopsies done, very often they would show microscopic colitis. So it's one of those things that I think we stumbled upon something that we didn't know quite what to do with when we started telling people they had microscopic colitis. And now that we know more about this pathology or biology of the colon, we are finding that there is this condition called leaky gut, and that is kind of completing the loop between what is inflaming my brain. So we have an inflammatory subtype of Alzheimer's disease that for whom the markers of inflammation are elevated. We also have a different, slightly equally common, I think I would say, form of Alzheimer's that is called glucotoxic. And this is got the word glucose in it, has to do with sugar toxicity, has to do with what happens when people get diabetes, but it also points to, in the Bredesen language, that you don't have to have fully blown up diabetes to have glucose damage to your brain. And so lately, you've probably seen more people being described as having pre-diabetes than you used to hear people talk about.
Yeah.
And then even if people don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes, it's pretty widely accepted that sugar is not the panacea that it was touted to be 30 or 40 years ago. The perfect food, you know, the sugar, because again, glucose is the major fuel for our bodies. And sucrose, which is sugar, table sugar, is two glucose molecules put together. So what could be better than a double bomb of fuel? And so it is really becoming quite challenging to find anybody that has anything nice to say, you know, about sugar.
Except for those of us who like it.
Yeah, except all of us that like it, right? So the glucotoxicity, the medical world has not only gotten into talking about diabetes and pre-diabetes, but it's also gotten into talking about something called the metabolic syndrome. Have many of you heard of that term?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the metabolic syndrome is something that, again, in the last 20 years has been used by doctors when you are trying to put together the complete picture of how does high blood pressure, high cholesterol, borderline diabetes, and all of these things that are affecting my circulation, is there a syndrome that I can label all of those things as being different parts of a syndrome that increase my risk for heart attack and stroke? So rather than just saying, well, if I have only high blood pressure, my risk of a heart attack is this big. If I only have high cholesterol, my risk of a heart attack might only be this big. But if I have high blood pressure and high cholesterol and borderline diabetes, and maybe gout or something else, can I put all those things together and say, I have this much risk, and we're going to call that overlap and that combination a metabolic syndrome, because they are all things that have to do with my body's metabolism of certain key factors in heart disease. So that has become discussed in the medical world over the last 20 years to try to describe people that are at higher risk of heart trouble because of multiple risk factors bundled together. So Bredesen doesn't take us into calling everybody diabetic or pre-diabetic, but he does say that sugar is bad for our brain and our body, and therefore it should get its own designation as a subtype of Alzheimer's disease. And some people labeled type 1 diabetes as the kind of diabetes you would have in childhood, type 2 diabetes as adult onset diabetes, and people in the last 10 years or so have started calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes because there's enough of a connection between inflammation caused by sugar or diabetes, inflammation, damage to the brain from diabetes that is deleterious enough to the brain that we should even call it type 3 diabetes. So I think it just points out the role of sugar in this whole story. The next subtype that I want to be talking about next month is going to be type 2 or atrophic subtype of dementia. Atrophic is the word from which atrophy comes from. It's an adjective from the word atrophy, and atrophy is shriveling up or shrinkage or loss of tissue. When my muscles atrophy, they get smaller. When my muscles atrophy, they get smaller. And the way Bredesen uses this term is he says that there is atrophy of the brain caused by suboptimal or insufficient nutrients or fertilizer for the brain. And some of those nutrients are everyday things that we hear about. Vitamin B12, vitamin D. Sometimes those are the two biggest vitamin deficiencies they talk about for affecting the brain, but also in some people, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, all of the big regular ones are contributors to brain health, to have enough of those things in our diet, in our bloodstream, to nourish our brain and grow new brain cells. And without them, you will have more atrophy of your brain. In that same category with those vitamins are hormones, whether they are the hormones of the thyroid, whether they're hormones of the adrenal gland, whether they're hormones of the ovary or testes, whether they are the other cascade of hormones like DHEA and pregnenolone and some of these other things that are raw material that the body uses to make these other hormones. So Bredesen, when I have you do a whole slew of blood tests, there are an awful lot of the blood tests that center around this kind of type 2 Alzheimer's disease or atrophic Alzheimer's disease, as Bredesen talks about them. So for the next month's session, I'm going to, when I finish this talk, going to want to create a master list of these hormones and vitamins that need to be rechecked via blood tests if you haven't had these checked within the last couple of months. So we'll go back kind of like we did before the last blood draw and hopefully we learned how not to do it last time.
It took us a while.
Right. And to try to make a list and give this list to Jenna in the lab, in the office, so that she can sometime between now and is it
The
the
second
8th?
Wednesday.
The 8th of March, I think, the second Wednesday, and get this battery of tests, and we will talk in more detail about the role of
Yep.
atrophy subtype of Alzheimer's disease for that next time. There are quite a few labs, but they are nowhere near the number that you guys all went through. We're doing this, we're parceling this out in smaller batches than we did the first time around last year. And so anyone that's had lab work from me in the last few months has probably had the majority of these, and the only time you would need to have those rechecked for next month is if your last reading on these things was low enough that we change the dose of different things. So the thing that I wanted to broach as a new topic for this group to consider is that I think many of you I have mentioned in the past that whenever we're doing a retrospective of what we have learned or what we haven't learned, I have expressed some frustration that we don't have more to do for the people that are severely impaired with their cognitive decline. And so that subgroup, which involves somewhere between 5 and 10 people in our total group of 50 or so that is on this list right at the moment, have far more advanced cognitive decline than everybody else. And the medical world, including me, haven't had much to offer those folks. We can offer them support in this particular group, and that's valuable. But I think what I've learned over the last year or two is that there are some extra tests that we might be able to do for those individuals. And there might also be, you've seen me stumble over the last couple of years about how to approach supplements, that there is a huge number of supplements that are promoted to help build new brain cells. Wow. And which ones of those supplements are the best ones to take? And right now, there is no head-to-head comparison of any of those things. And unless you are a very, very successful vitamin house, you probably are not even thinking of doing a medical trial to compare what's the benefit of vitamin B12 versus vitamin D. Should you just take both? What should you, and those, many people are on both. And probably those two, as in my example, there is probably closest to uniform agreement among anything related to supplements with those two, that most of the analysts of brain health say that vitamin B12 is critical to the brain and vitamin D is critical to the brain. Yeah. So that's not really controversial, but when I talk about the whole laundry list of things that are reputed to be good for your brain, from acetyl L-carnitine to L-carnosine to N-acetylcysteine to coenzyme Q to alpha-lipoic acid to turmeric to huperzine to citicoline to bacopa to rhodiola. There are about 50 of these things that are on most of the extensive lists of what is good for your brain. And I don't have any way of knowing which of them are preferable to some of the ones next on the list. So what I am wanting to propose is that we offer to the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 most severely impaired individuals in our group to do a study with those folks with an extensive list of supplements. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's still only partly formed thought in my brain. So I welcome other feedback, but here's where I'm at on it. That most of these individuals who are severely impaired need to grow new brain cells. And I have picked the 15 most beneficial supplements to grow new brain cells. And these individuals need, by their MRI and by their current clinical status, need more new brain cells. And so how do I get a group of people to take 15 new medicines? Scary. Scary as can be. But I think when you look at Bredesen's First Survivors book, there are a couple people in there that run a whole lot of supplements, and they have completely reversed their cognitive decline. So I've gone to a few different books and tried to create a hierarchy of those 15 most beneficial supplements. I don't know if that's going to be correct or not, but what I'm proposing is that I want to propose to this group of people, the subgroup of our bigger group, to start one of these supplements and a week later start a second supplement. And a week later start a third supplement. And over the course of about 3 months, we would be introducing them to a dozen supplements.
Not bad.
Some of them may already have them, and so their list doesn't have to be in that same order. They may already have, as BJ just pointed out, 2 or 3 or 4 of these that they're already taking. So they may not have to take 15 new ones. They might only have to take 11 new ones.
Right.
It's still a big deal. And if I can share, I think Susan and Bill won't mind me saying they have a integrative medicine doctor in their area that they have been going to for quite a long time, who is a specialist on a lot of supplements, and he has given them quite a few supplements. And I think Susan is probably on quite a long list of supplements at the moment.
We are, and we actually had a consult with Dr. Ackerman this week. We drove up to his place, which is about 90 minutes from us. He put us on berberine, and when he does the supplement search, he goes into the NIH website, and list the supplement, say berberine, and then he'll put on dementia and see what studies have shown if berberine really has an impact on those kinds of issues. And he felt that the berberine could be beneficial, particularly for Bill. He also thought it would be beneficial for me. So I ordered it from Amazon when we came back. We just got it yesterday afternoon, and we took our first dose of it at lunchtime. So I write down in our calendar that today on February 7th, we started berberine, and
So maybe if I can, if you could, you've given me copies of some of the things he's written. If you would email me his contact information again, I think it might be useful for me to run by my final 15 lists and see what he thinks of that list, and I will hopefully lead to a conversation with him where I can share what I've learned about these things and where he is, and maybe come up with a smarter list than either one of us could have by ourselves.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I will send you his when we were in with Dr. Ackerman this week, I was thinking, I wish the Doc Ock and Dr. Teel, could have a conversation, could sit down, talk about a whole lot of different things, because you have the advantage that he doesn't have. He does not have a group of people like this. He has quite a large group of patients that see him, but there's no group per se. So everyone's out there doing their stuff individually and not having support. And I think he could benefit from a conversation with you and vice versa. So I'll send you his information.
Great. And so the way I'm shaping this up is that most of these 5 to 10 individuals, I already have the benefit not only of a whole lot of blood tests on them, but I also have a urinary neurotransmitter collection on all of them that gives me a measure of 15 or 20 neurotransmitters in their brain. And so what I'm thinking is that if we started a number of supplements and did it in an organized fashion, and also what I want to commit, and I will eventually have to have several of you participate with me in this, whether or not you are a supplement recipient or not, to check with the individuals and their loved ones who are on this whole array of supplements. And I want to talk to them as a part of this project on a weekly basis to see if we can tease out what differences they may be noticing, they and their spouse may be noticing as we go through this. Because I've also been struck by the fact that we're just in our infancy of even asking the right questions about what people are noticing. By the time you're flunking your mocha or your sage, or one of these, or that you're, it's probably going, and the individuals, if they're already having word finding difficulties and already having trouble with cognition in a big way, it may be very hard for a standardized test to reflect positive or negative changes with these individuals. So it's really going to take teasing out that information by asking some open-ended questions and regularly doing that week after week after week to try to find out whether these, whether we're making a difference or not making a difference. And then after a chunk of time, like 3 or 4 months on an array of supplements, to then repeat the urinary neurotransmitter test again, see what's happening to these factors, and let another 3 or 4 months go by, and then repeat the same neurotransmitter tests and see where the data leads us. And at the end of a year, to repeat the volumetric MRI and see whether new brain cells have been grown, so that we would have an intervention, the supplements, we would have a periodic measurement of neurotransmitters, and then the final exam being a volumetric MRI a year later and see what it shows. Because I value what we're all doing together for prevention, early treatment, whatever, for most of us. But I also think that there's a sense of urgency to try to do something more dramatic for those whose situation is more fragile.
Yep.
Could I make a statement?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. And this is very, it showed me what sugar does to me. When I went on Food Addicts Anonymous, they had you go off of flour and sugar. Sugar could only be the 6th ingredient in any kind of salad dressing or anything. It was not that hard because there was only maybe 2 or 3 that you could choose from. That's good. But when I went off of it, it took about 4 or 5 days before I really felt the effects of it and of going off of sugar. And in going off of sugar, I found that my mind became much clearer. I was able to deal with things. I didn't get emotional and anymore with things. I was just able to think through and do things. And but then when I broke and I went back on sugar, I had 2 things that happened. One, I cried for 3 days. I couldn't stop. Another, I couldn't stop talking. I wouldn't let anybody else talk. I talk.
So I'm thinking
things that sugar does to you, and I know that sugar really is very, very bad. It makes me very tired too.
Sure.
So
I'm thinking, Sandra, that the benefits and perhaps side effects of all of these other supplements could be profound. I don't think we will know until we actually get into it, but I just have a feeling that nobody's ever going to study these inexpensive supplements one at a time because there isn't enough research money to do these kinds of things. But I think it is quite likely that if supplement A is good for you and supplement B is good for you, there's a pretty good chance that A and B together might be even a little more effective. And so can you carry that to an extreme, or does that become completely overwhelming once you get past a couple of them or not? I don't know the answer to that, but I think there's, like I said, a sense of urgency to try to do this with some members of our group, and I think the rest of the group would be will probably be called upon to participate in some way as assistance to me in doing this or something in some fashion. I want to do it myself at the beginning to try to see what kind of obstacles we encounter first. And then Patty and I have talked briefly about if the costs of the supplements, which is not exceptional, they are in the neighborhood of 25 to 50 bucks a month. But and then the urine tests are a couple $100 at a time. But if these things are beyond the means of anybody that wants to do this, we would take some of the grant and proceeds that we already have from this program to reimburse those individuals for those things, if everybody is in agreement with doing something like that.
I have a question about the sugar, the fruit sugar, and then the sugar you put in your coffee. Is any sugar acceptable?
From the dietary books that I've selected here, most of them allow stevia or agave as sugar substitutes. Now, again, the thing that we're talking about here, though, in the big picture, is not that you can never have sugar. The issue is to be aware that too much sugar is a staple for all of the people in our country, and minimizing that is healthier. But I'm talking about minimizing it. I'm not talking about, if using Benny as an example here, if his only sugar in his entire 24 hours a day was one sugar in a cup of coffee, I don't think that is something that is likely to cause his brain to seize up. So I'm really trying to emphasize maybe the obvious, and that is that excessive amounts of sugar that are in the typical American diet are detrimental, and that's what Bredesen is pounding on this. But that doesn't mean that any of these proponents of these kind of approaches, as a matter of fact, they regularly talk about the people that have they're very religious about their dark chocolate every day. So although if anybody watched the news yesterday, I happened to be walking past a TV in the assisted living home, and the headline was "Dark chocolate found to contain heavy metals of cadmium and lead, and dangerous amounts of chemicals per Consumer Reports." So I think
I have some good news on that front, that there were some chocolate bars. Ghirardelli was okay, and if you go at around 72% cacao, you're better off also. I mean, of course, that then has more sugar, but anyways, but Ghirardelli had the least amount of lead.
So some of the chocolate addicts in our group have already been doing the research for us.
Yes.
Now, I've fallen in love with salad that has blueberries, raspberries, all the other kinds of fruits I can get in there, apples, that kind of a thing. So it's usually more fruit than green salad. Are you suggesting that I should back down a bit?
No, I'm not. No. I think likewise in most of these cookbooks, including Dr. Amen's Brain Warriors cookbook, he talks about fruit in their natural skin is the absolute best. So the fruit with fiber is fine. He tries to get you to minimize some of the fruit juices, but fruit in their with the fiber in their natural state are generally good.
Okay, great.
And kind of pulling these two things together, I'm thinking that if I had to take 15 supplements in addition to the other stuff I'm already taking, the more of them I could put into a fruit smoothie, the better off I would be.
That's true.
Right.
And I think that would be absolutely mandatory unless you can, down a whole cupful of pills without any difficulty. I think the idea would be once you are an individual, and again, some people with cognitive impairment also have difficulty swallowing.
Yeah.
So that requires that we have a method of getting these supplements into somebody. And I think the best way to do it is going to be to open up a bunch of capsules into a smoothie and mix it up and just drink that, drink your medicine, on that particular morning. So I'm thinking that this is something that I've just kind of come to wanting to do over the last week or so. And so this is the first draft of that I'm presenting to you guys. I've talked to a couple of individuals who are in this predicament, and they have been open to the idea or enthusiastic about the idea, one of each. So I think it is something that I wanted to bring to this whole group and get additional feedback. Patty had asked whether other people could go on this kind of a regimen as well. I really think it makes sense to try to do this with a smaller group of people for whom the benefits or side effects or something would be more noticeable earlier on, will be the guides for us. And if obviously, if we are finding positive results, then surely we'll all want to go on to something like this and figure out a way to do it. But I think at the moment, if I can find a handful of people who are in favor of doing this kind of intense regimen, I think it would be, I think we might move the needle on this very challenging situation of trying to figure out whether an extensive array, when an extensive array makes a difference of supplements. I know that you all have probably seen online that there are proprietary blends that all sorts of companies put together. And how did they arrive at that? Did they try 50 different combinations before they arrived at that? I don't think so. I think but somehow they arrived at a combination and are now trying to peddle it for a pretty penny, for, I think the most dramatic example these days is Prevagen, that is on nearly all of the TV stations on a regular basis. And Prevagen's major ingredient is a protein from a jellyfish that became the key ingredient in their particular concoction. So maybe they're right around booth pay, who knows?
These jellyfish. So I have one other question, and I know it's time to wrap up, but can you grow new brain cells if you don't have, if you're still creating, if inflammation or glucose intolerance or, various other things are impacting the blood-brain barrier and still putting crap into your brain, or if you don't have enough, I guess you're thinking these supplements are like fertilizer, but.
I am, but I'm also thinking that most of the individuals that we're talking about, they're highly sensitive CRPs and their homocysteines are low-ish, so that they are.
So the damage may have already
been done. But your question is still a good one, in that the science on growing new brain cells is that the hippocampus in most of us older adults still gives birth to about 750 new neurons every day, but most of them don't grow up. But I don't know that they have done the research to say that if I only have 1% of my hippocampus left, does that mean I'm only growing 7 new brain cells, a day? Because the parents aren't around anymore.
Right.
I don't really know the answer to that question. But certainly that would be some of the things that if we find that we just can't move the needle, on some individuals, that might be what we're finding out.
Yeah.
We're almost wrapping up.
Okay.
So in any case, I don't think this will be the last newfangled suggestion I will, have about something.
I'm glad your brain is still young.
But I think Patty raises another good question, and that is, how can we be sure that there isn't inflammatory stuff still going on? I submitted myself to a Vibrant Neural Zoomer Plus blood test a few weeks ago, and the results came back last week, and so I have 7 or 8 antibodies to things that I've never heard of before that are impairing my brain. So what do I do about that? And the question is that now that I've done about a dozen or 15 neural Zoomer plus blood tests on people in our groups, we have participant A that has 6 or 7 things in their brain, and participant B has 6 or 7 different ones, and participant C has 6 or 7 different ones. So that is going to require some groundbreaking work on either figuring out the impact of those things for those individuals. And I think this is going to be something that I'll be talking more about later in this particular year. So we're working our way toward some of these newer cutting edge kinds of things, but we're going to proceed kind of methodically through Bredesen type 1, type 1.5, type 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll get into this other stuff related to the neural Zoomer stuff probably in 3 or 4 months. How about that for an advertisement?
Well, I can't take the test because of the pacemaker.
Right, I
So,
know.
But I can keep a journal.
You can keep a journal and you can do some of these other things, so that would be for sure.
Unless
But-
it comes about that I can take the test eventually.
Right.
It might. Who knows?
So, pardon me?
Are you at Damascata in
I-
Miles?
I'm down the hall here at the Booth Bay Region Health Center.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for, as they say on Car Talk, wasting a perfectly good afternoon.
We don't get car talk anymore. So it's always here, right?
Yeah.
Who calls it wasted? I know.
Yeah. Stay tuned for, I'm going to try to ask this group, if you can, with your emails. I'm going to talk to Patty about some way for the group's IO so that you can respond to the email without something going to absolutely all 50 people in the group every single time. I've been hearing that there
Yeah,
are.
you can change these. I can change the settings so that,
I think we've got to change the settings because there is some, I probably heard 5 or 6 people
Yeah.
say that their inboxes are overflowing
right.
with
you can-
stuff from
you
this
can
group.
get a you get like a summary once a day or once a week.
So Patty
instead
and
of
I
getting-
will work on that
Yeah.
to try to streamline that stuff so that you're not, your email accounts are not going crazy.
Yeah, it can
No,
be
I
tailored
haven't-
for each
I haven't
person.
gotten anything.
All right. Hey, so we will, I wish you all a good Valentine's Day and President's birthdays and State of the Union, and away we go.
Bye, thank you.
Goodbye,
Session.
and thank you for all your time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
good meeting.
It's beautiful.